Hi, welcome back to the Dinosaur Experience. I've got Rexi here with me, and this is Martin. Nash is out there. He's having a bite to eat in the backyard and having a little play out there. All right, got a book for you today. Today's book is called Calvin Can't Fly. All right, it's about a bird who loves to read like we do. Okay, it's written by Jennifer Byrne. It's worth half an AR point, so when you get back to school, don't forget, take your test and you can get your AR points up. All right, it's coming up for you right now. Calvin is a starling. He was born under the eaves of an old barn with his 3 brothers, 4 sisters, and 67,432 cousins. Starlings have big families. Right from the beginning, Calvin was different. Right from the day all the little starlings tumbled out of the nest to discover the world. Charlie discovered worms. Adeline discovered grass. Clement discovered dirt. Aubrey discovered water. And Calvin? Well, Calvin discovered a book. While all of Calvin's cousins chased beetles, bugs, and ants, Calvin was learning to read letters, words, and sentences. At night, his cousins dreamed of insects eating and garbage picking. Calvin dreamed of adventure stories, legends, and poetry, and even dreamed that someday he'd become a great writer himself. On June 1st, when all the little starlings lined up for flying lessons with their teacher, Mr. Winstead, Calvin was nowhere to be seen. Where is that bird? Actually, Calvin was in the library. As the other little starlings were learning to swoop, hover, and fly figure eights, Calvin buried his beak in books. And there his mind soared. Calvin read about pirates and cavemen, volcanoes and rainbows, whales and dinosaurs. Calvin especially loved dinosaurs. Just like me and you, he loved dinosaurs. He learned how the planets circle the sun and what makes the wind blow, and amazing facts like how caterpillars grow up to become butterflies. His books took him to places wings never could, and his heart fluttered with excitement. Calvin's cousins called him Nerdy Bird, Geeky Beaky, and Bookworm. And when you're a bird, being called a worm is a very bad thing. Calvin ruffled his feathers and mumbled, "Oh, how the wounding words of scorn do sting." And then he sadly waddled back to the library, the only place where he was happy. And so he spent all summer reading, learning, and absorbing everything his little starling mind could. Until the first leaf turned orange and fell to the ground. The fall winds sent a chill through the old barn, and summer's nests blew to the floorboards. It was time to head south. His cousins warned, "Calvin, you better learn to fly. In a couple of days, we've got to be out of here." Calvin said, "Ah, yes, migration. I've read about that." His sister asked, "Calvin, can you fly?" And Calvin had to admit that he couldn't. All the other starlings took off in a giant formation. But Calvin could only stand and watch. A big, lonely tear rolled down his cheek. Calvin turned and trudged back towards the old barn. He was so upset he didn't even notice his brothers and sisters and cousins coming back to get him. All of a sudden they were tying up Calvin's middle with string and scraps of cloth that they'd found in the garbage. They grasped the other end with their beaks, and off they flew, with Calvin, somewhat embarrassed, in tow. For days and days they flew, and Calvin recognised the rivers, mountains and towns that he had read about all summer. Excitedly he pointed them out to his brothers, sisters and cousins, but the other little starlings just flapped their wings and headed south. Soon there came a day when the winds blew especially hard. Trees bent sideways and leaves scattered wildly. Flying became harder and harder, and the air had an odd smell to it, the smell of danger. Calvin remembered back to his favourite weather book and warned the rest of the family. A hurricane! A hurricane's coming! All his brothers and sisters and cousins asked, "What's a hurricane?" Calvin explained as quickly as his little beak could. He needed to get out of the path of the violent tropical weather system, which is storming up the coast at a tremendous speed and will not diminish until it encounters stretches of landmass. Everybody, make haste and get into the cave. They had no idea what Calvin was saying, but they had to admit it did sound real. So the flock made a loop-de-loop left, a dipsy-doodle right, and dove into the cave. And they did everything that Calvin told them to. To their amazement, a great storm did blow across the land. It thundered over the mountains, and it roared through the villages. It smashed and crashed, rumbled and raged, just as Calvin had predicted. The whole big starling family gathered together, watching in fear and awe. The storm finally ended, and the sun came up in the sky, and the starlings came out of their cave. They were safe and sound, and all because of Calvin. They celebrated with a big starling party in honour of Calvin, and they ate big, juicy worms and yummy, crunchy beetles. They danced and sang songs about how Calvin had saved their lives, and they toasted Calvin with acorn caps filled with fresh, clear mountain water. Calvin was so happy and felt so good deep down inside that he jumped and hopped and danced and flapped his wings. And flapped his wings. And flapped his wings. All the other starlings looked at him in amazement. "Calvin, you can fly!" they exclaimed. And Calvin, the happiest starling in the whole wide world, chirped, "Why, yes, I do believe I can." And they all flew south with big, wide smiles on their little starling faces. Especially Calvin. All right, that was a good book about a bookworm, a little bird that loved to read. Do you like to read? I know we do. I hope you enjoy the stories that we tell you. Don't forget to come back often. Like our Facebook page, find us on YouTube and subscribe there. And you'll be able to follow all the things that Rexi does here. Some of the visit he goes to schools, and sometimes he goes to churches and birthday parties. And don't forget, if you want Rexi and Nash to come to your party, then drop us a line and we'll see if we can do something for you. All right, thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed it. And don't forget, see you next time. Bye.